What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I have a very special type of video with a very special guest. I have Colin of Twitch fame and Kyber Shards fame. Sorry, BTR, the O is a zero, all the plugs. Hey, buddy.
Hi, how we doing, my dude?
I'm good. I'm excited to have you here. The start of a new video series.
I'm excited to be here. It's a cool idea for a series.
Thank you. So, since this is the first video of the series, you all may want to know what we're talking about. Or you probably saw the title and thumbnail of the video also, but this is a video series on crafting the perfect character backstory. So, I think that this is something that gets a lot of lip service in tabletop role-playing game communities, especially on places like YouTube and social media, about crafting backstories. But I think there are a lot of different ways that you can do it, and I want to highlight my methodology of how I build a character backstory in a way that is in-depth, thorough, allows me to have a lot to work with over the course of the campaign, allows my game master to have a lot to work with over the course of the campaign. And by the time we hit session one, I feel like I know who my character is going out of the gate, which I think is something that I hear a lot of people discuss when they're playing a new character in a new campaign is I don't really know who they are until the fourth or fifth session. And I think doing something like this, what I'm about to force Colin to do with me, will make that a little less true. You'll have a better understanding of who your character is. So are you ready to get going, Colin?
I sure hope so. Probably not, but let's find out. This is exciting for me.
Yeah. So Colin, why don't you tell the people who have never seen your face before your experience with tabletop role-playing games?
It's very minimal. My exposure is probably more than normal, but my actual participation was very minimal before starting to play. My very first game was a one-shot ran by Philip from the Geek Pantheon on my Twitch stream, which was great just because I wanted to roll dice and see what it was like to play because I'd been listening to Eberron Renewed for so long. I wanted to do it. And then when y'all decided you were going to do the Kyber Shards campaign, I was asked to participate in that. And I jumped at the opportunity to participate in a long form campaign and then got very intimidated as the new guy because specifically in the Discord that we created, the amount of information that you knew about your character as opposed to me just going, I think I got a cool name and he gonna be green was a lot. And so, yeah, I'm still in my first ever long form campaign, but I have done the cliche that you just spoke on, which I now know Pog Harad very well. He is my character.
Yeah.
So I'm envious of the fact that from the outset, I'm bumbling at the decisions that you went, no, this is where I go. So I'm excited to know what that experience is to create a fully fleshed out person.
And just so everyone knows, this is a hypothetical exercise for me and Colin. Colin might end up playing this character someday, but I reached out to him and was like, hey, come up with a name, race, subrace, and class, and we'll go from there. Yeah, let's do this. I'm going to act as Colin's game master for the sake of this video, but obviously a lot of this stuff would be stuff that you're doing on your own, where the snapshot that I'm thinking is you have been asked by one of your friends or somebody in your life, hey, I want to run a game of insert tabletop role-playing game system here. And this is the moment after you've said yes. Of, okay, what character do I want to play? And you come up with the ancestry and class, and now you're ready to go. Colin, Eric, in terms of character backstory construction and the focus of this video, we're going to start with the present, because I think it's a much more interesting way to construct a backstory by figuring out who your character is and then constructing the backstory to fit that, as opposed to coming up with this really elaborate backstory and then realizing that it's incongruous with the character you want to play and trying to figure out, okay, how do I get these two things connected?
Okay.
So the idea is we're going to go through some questions and think about some things about your character to figure out who they are, what character, as soon as session one starts up, are you going to be playing at the start of this campaign. But first and foremost, why don't you tell the people who your character is?
God, I will be playing Borin Stone Shadow, who is a mountain dwarf who has moved into the city. My knowledge of D&D is pretty much relegated to Eberron as a new player, and my idea being living in somewhere like Stormreach as a nautical engineer working in harbor district down at the docks, and is repairing and engineering for improvement the different and various types of boats that come through. Very much
Awesome.
a social person getting to interact with all those different characters.
Very cool. And something to just keep in the back of your mind while we're doing all of this, it does not need to even come up in this episode, but at some point we are going to have to think about, okay, you're playing a warlock, and I think specifically a hexblade warlock. Is that correct? Because you wanted to be able to still swing a sword at stuff.
Yep, I want to hit things.
Yeah. So the nature of a hexblade warlock is you have a sword that you can manifest that is tied to your warlock pact. So in some capacity, that will need to tie into your character's backstory in a way. Does not need to today. Like I said, we're trying to figure out who your character is right now. Dwarf, working in the harbor. There are a ton of different harbors throughout Eberron, so we don't even really need to figure that out because that might be dictated by, as the GM, where I want the campaign to start.
Mm-hmm.
You just work in the harbor nearest to wherever we're starting, whether that's Stormreach, Sharn, Lazar Principalities, etc. So I'm just taking notes as we go. So the first section that I tend to go through when I have this information is character personality. So determining who your character is in terms of temperament and demeanor is where I like to start, because that is ultimately 90% of the time what I am going to be role playing at the table is their temperament and demeanor. And that's how they're going to approach every situation. So the first question, and you can add as much nuance to this as you want, because there is some nuance to this question. Are they an introvert or an extrovert?
Yeah, I'm going to say that in my immediate impulse is extrovert in the shallowest of ways. Real easy. He's the kind of guy that everyone wants to have a beer with. We'll all share an ale, but you probably won't have a very heavy conversation with him.
Gotcha. And if this campaign is D&D 5th edition, which it is because of the class and subclass that we have given, Warlock's primary stat is charisma, so it makes sense to play an extrovert in that sense. But you could also play charismatic introvert, not to say that introverts aren't charismatic. Anyway, moving on. At the start of the campaign, session 1, is Borin an optimist or a pessimist?
Ooh, Borin is a pessimist.
Extroverted pessimist. I look forward to his emo album.
As do I.
Okay, great. And those of you watching, I'm not asking follow-up questions because that's not what we're doing. I'm not asking why is he a pessimist? What happened? That comes later. We're just trying to build the snapshot right now. So, how does Borin handle stress or conflict?
I'm going to focus more on the idea of conflict because that keeps things in a social, and I am easier at thinking about that. He handles it head on. He is very abrupt at getting through challenges.
Okay. But just because it is going to inform some of the later questions, I am going to force your hand, as it were, because we need to start getting an internal picture of Borin as well. You don't even need to say how well does he handle stress, or what does he it can be how well does he handle stress, or what does he do to handle stress internally, but doesn't need to be specific, but just some kind of form of how he handles things when he's getting stressed.
I think that's why I went towards conflict. As a pessimist, I see him as surprisingly unstressed because he does not think he's prepared for things to go wrong. So very little is going to stress him. Conflict is far more of a prevalent aspect of working in a part like the harbor, whereas coming from an engineering standpoint, everything is a problem to be resolved, and that's not stressful because that's what you chose to do.
Okay. No, I love that idea that because he is so pessimistic, nothing stresses him because he expects things to go
My
bad.
my job is to fix what's broken, and so I expect things to break. And so
Yep.
when something's wrong, that's fine because I'm a make right person.
Okay. So next we have a multi-point question. So I need at least one. You can give me more than one, but I need at least one for each of these categories. I need a quirk, a habit, and a mannerism that is unique to Boren.
The quirk is that he has a single loud, explosive laugh.
Okay.
When he is tickled, he's one of those that just bursts with the ha,
Okay.
and it's whether appropriate
Nice.
or not. Quirk.
Is he the kind of guy who
habit.
laughs at a funeral?
Not doing this. I'm not doing this with you, Eric. Quirk habit. I guess would be like his tell is what you're looking for. Like what's his subconscious?
No. Does he, that would fall under more like mannerisms. I'm thinking habits in terms of, does he, after his shift, go to the pub every day? Or does he go for a jog in the morning? Or does he smoke?
The entire cast of Cheers all wrapped into one. He goes to the same pub every night. That's his habit. And the last one was mannerism.
Yep.
He snorts while thinking.
Snorts. Okay.
Kind of a full head clear snort when thinking.
Okay. Nice. Are there any additional ones that you would like to put under these categories? Or are you good with those right there?
I guess it would fall under quirk and mannerism, but he is, in his extrovertedness, he is the person who backslaps while laughing. That's his extroversion.
One single loud laugh accompanied by one single hard smack.
No, he doesn't beat someone. He does not punch them. That's the boisterously jolly outward side of Boren.
Okay, very cool. All right, so that is, in 4 questions, your character's entire personality. Congrats. No.
I'm ready to have a conversation now.
Yeah. So no, we have an extrovert who's a pessimist who decidedly handles conflict head on, does not beat around the bush, but does not experience a whole lot of stress because he expects things to go wrong. So things going wrong does not tend to bother him. Single loud explosive laugh, goes to the same pub every night, has major Cheers vibes, and snorts while thinking and smacks people on the back while laughing. Love it. Okay. How are you feeling about Boren so far, Colin?
I'm genuinely excited. I don't understand this guy, but he's interesting.
Yeah. So, on to the next section. And importantly, if at any point, and this is true for you all watching this video, if at any point you think, based on the picture that we're starting to paint, I'm going to go back and change how he handles stress or change him to an introvert, it's totally fine. This is not, it is written in ink because I'm using a pen, but it's not set in stone.
Stone Shadow.
Yeah, that's his name.
Hit me.
So next section is characters' motivations. So we know who they are. We know how they carry themselves in conversation and in their day-to-day life. But now, why do they exist in day-to-day life? And more importantly, because we are starting session 1 as an adventurer. Now, your campaign might be doing a prologue thing or something, but in the case of this GM talking to this player, we're starting as adventurers. So this is not only, it's actually primarily, why is Boren an adventurer? Why does Boren stop being a nautical engineer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So, first question. What is Boren's personal ambition? Not in terms of like systemic change or looking out for family. What does Boren want for himself as an adventurer?
The simplest and shallowest of selfish reasons. He wants to see new places. Okay. It is the appeal to working in the harbors is people come and go, single serving friendships and interactions and hearing stories, and that'll carry on. Go have a conversation with a stranger in a new bar in a new place and then move to the next.
Nice.
See new things, do new things.
And just to provide some further clarification for people watching the video, things that I would put under a category of like personal ambition would be obviously things like fame, fortune, but also things like personal growth, because your character is an adventurer for a reason. There is something that they need to accomplish before they can settle down. And so even if in your mind your character is extroverted, optimist, they see the good in people, and in your head you already know they ultimately want to settle down, start a family and stuff like that, they're an adventurer. So your personal ambition can be personal growth. Like, I want to become the type of person who can leave this life behind. That is a super interesting personal ambition. So many TV shows have their main character with that. Colin and I used to watch Sons of Anarchy back when that aired, and like, main character, one of their personal ambitions was to grow to the point where they no longer had to do this. And we all saw how well that worked out for them. So keep that in mind, that it doesn't necessarily need to be an external gaining of things. It can be an internal personal ambition. Okay, number 2. What is Boren's relationship with justice? And specifically, are they driven by a desire to right wrongs, protect the innocent, get vengeance against slights against them? When Boren thinks of what justice is, what is justice to Boren?
Someone else's responsibility.
Okay.
Boren is lawful, but doesn't feel compelled to be the person who enforces those necessarily. Wrong is wrong, but illegal is not necessarily wrong. He's, as a people person, there would be occasions where justice would be on a variable scale because of the people involved in that.
So to Boren, justice is not a black and white affair.
Correct.
Lawful and chaotic are not, that it is a spectrum. Okay.
Yep.
That is also an important aspect. And this is a follow-up question to clarify this answer so that when we move forward, we have a very clear picture. Justice to Boren is someone else's responsibility. He has no desire to be involved in the doling out of justice, but justice is not black and white. Depending on circumstances, things like that, justice might present itself in a different light.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to sit Boren down in Boren's civics class back in dwarf school, how would Boren define justice, like, as a concept? Like, what is its function within a society?
It would be the collective decision to establish order for the general good.
Okay.
And to clarify on the side of laws, he's the kind of person who, when it came time for elections, would be much more concerned about who's the judge than who's the sheriff.
Gotcha.
That kind of
Love that
approach.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. What is Boren's relationship with knowledge and information? Like, does he want to seek hidden truths or ancient secrets? Or is he much more of a current events? What's in the past is in the past. Nobody should care.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say no one should care. Very much the pub sponge of, he is an active listener to whoever he's around. And knowledge in general is something that he wants to take on. He doesn't forget the interesting story that the archaeologist told him after an excavation. And he's also very interested in who's coming to town to put on a minstrel show.
Okay. But Boren is much more likely, if we're on an adventure and we need to gain some information about a nearby dungeon or ruin, the wizard can go to the library to research. Boren's headed to the tavern to ask people. Okay. So knowledge is like a living thing to Boren, as opposed to a thing that resides in books. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Practical knowledge rather than static.
Okay. And lastly, I'm really interested for this one because extroverted pessimist provides an interesting canvas for this question. Boren's relationship with relationships. Does Boren have personal connections that motivate them and their actions, such as family, friends, or rivals? I mean, let's start there. Yeah. Does Boren have strong relationships that motivates him to do what he does?
No.
Okay.
But wants them. I feel like he's the person who has, but does not currently. And there's something about being an extrovert who's really good at forming connections and bonds, but doesn't currently have one of significance or substance.
Yeah.
I think I just made me in D&D.
Welcome to my relationship with Ari.
I just wish I was more Pog. I'd like to punch him.
So he doesn't have any strong current relationships that to the point where it motivates him to act, but he wants them, has had them in the past, which provides an interesting question that we'll address in a later video of what happened to those relationships. Okay. And the next section 3, character goals. So once again, start of the campaign, Boren is going to be an adventurer. So he has crossed the threshold. He is leaving nautical engineering behind to a certain extent to go engage in the adventuring life with some other folks. What are Boren's current, at the start of the campaign, short-term goals? What does your character want to achieve in the near future? This could be something as simple as acquiring a specific piece of gear, or something more complex like earning the trust of a powerful ally or something like that, or acquiring a super secret piece of knowledge, something like that. But something that reasonably Boren would accomplish in the first 3-ish levels of the campaign.
I think it's going to be whether it would happen or not, at the outset would be to acquire a new skill set, because he's not bored yet, but as a creature with a hunger for travel and new experiences, if there's another place to stop in, maybe a different career would be an interesting change for him.
Cool.
But very much like the child leaving community college and determining a major, doesn't know what it's going to be, just thinks he's going to change it up.
Yeah. So once again, just to reiterate for the people watching this video, I would encourage you to keep it as vague as we just did and the examples I gave. Like, not when I say acquire a specific piece of gear, that is the concept, not acquire, insert super long story about the piece of gear that you want to acquire. Leave that open for now. Just determine what you want your character to be going after for the first few levels of the campaign. Now, long-term goals. So what are your character's ultimate aspirations? These things that are the driving forces that shape your decisions and actions throughout the entire campaign.
We're talking, where would he want to be in an epilogue? What would be the...
Yeah. His is at session 1. Where does he want his adventuring life to end?
It would be to have earned enough to whichever spot along the adventure spoke to him, he could buy property and make that a place of setting roots.
Okay.
The purpose of the adventuring life would be to stop having the adventuring life and create a home.
And without getting too terribly specific, what does it mean to Boren to establish a capital H home?
He won't stop if that's not the option. That's the reason. Like a Hoobastank song. That's the reason for things.
But does he want, like, he wants to earn enough to buy property to establish a home, but does a family come along with that?
Yes.
Or just like community or stability? What does home mean to
home?
Boren?
Is family, which currently for him at session 1 would be the idea of partner, children, that whole thing, with the ultimate being the idea of family, finding the people to have your front porch time with.
Gotcha. Okay. Love it. And now the third aspect of this, Boren's personal arc. So what you just alluded to with his current definition of home and where you could see his definition of home changing over time. Consider how Boren's goals, both short and long term, personalities, quirks, etc., might change and evolve and grow and develop throughout the story. What elements of Boren are you either excited to, or at the very least willing to have change?
I think it's interesting to consider that this person, as we've laid him out so far, is very much a participant listener. And I think it would be interesting to change that personality into him being a genuine communicator. Because and I started to think about this as you asked about what knowledge is to him. All conversations are for entertainment or for him to gain. And we didn't ever talk about him sharing. And so to find intimacy as opposed to just extrovertedness would be what I think is the change that would be very compelling to play.
Okay. Very cool. So I brought down definition of home. Currently, it's the very partner, kids, literal definition that a lot of people would prescribe to home, evolving into that plus found family, community, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then evolving from just an active listener to an active communicator when talking with other people. Anything else in terms of extrovertedness, pessimistic? Do you want him to become an optimist by the end, or will he always have that chip on his shoulder?
That's been in my mind. I feel like that could be more informed the more we discover where it came from.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that at this point I would describe it as being a chip on his shoulder, because sometimes your characteristic, whether it's a trauma response or not, could be healthy.
Yeah, totally.
And so there's pessimism can be a defense mechanism that keeps you from getting hurt in a really good way. So maybe there's no need. And depending on the partnerships or the friendships and the growth that happens there, could be a need for a pessimist. Maybe we yin yang there. I don't think there's anything about him that I would want to change from that first set of questions. And by the end game.
Cool. Going to the second set of questions, personal ambition, see new things, do new things. Do you think he'll always, even once home becomes a thing, there will still be that sense of wanderlust, maybe just in more of a take a holiday for a couple weeks to somewhere we've never been to before sense? Or will it shift into I'm happy where I am?
I think that's going to be the end goal, is the idea of finding a place that you don't want to leave.
Okay.
Whether that's a physical place, a spiritual place with your community. I think the idea would be to find the satisfaction and stillness for a creature with the wanderlust that he has.
Nice. His relationship with justice, do you think that will ever change into something more black and white, or something that's a little less collectivism and more concrete?
I do, because as adventurers, it's almost as though you are doomed to see wrongdoings and to be confronted with it. I don't know which direction it goes, but yes, I do think it would find a definition for him personally.
And just to be clear, people watching this, these are not things that are guaranteed to change. We're just identifying the markers within Boren that, as I'm given this as a game master, I can look at and see these are the goalposts that I can aim for, that Colin's interested in exploring Boren as a person. And so it will allow me to provide adventures and arcs for him that will allow him to play with his character and evolve him over time. And it also provides really cool role-playing opportunities, because if I just got the first half of this before we get into the personal arc, what might change, and I see that Colin has this sense of justice here that on its surface isn't bad. He doesn't think that justice is vengeance, which I think would be a much more toxic view. So as a dungeon master or game master, I might look at that and go, there's no real need for me to play with Boren's sense of justice, because this seems like a good, healthy place, not realizing Colin wants Boren to be challenged in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then we already touched on his relationship with knowledge evolving and relationships, not super evolving, but just trying to find his people, capital P. So, yeah. That's the personal arc question. So now we bring all of this together. So just real quick, running through the list, we have an extroverted pessimist who deals with conflict head on, does not stress due to his pessimistic nature. We'll do that.
Got it.
We have some really good quirks and habits. He wants to go out and see new places, do new things. Justice is a collective decision that is on a spectrum. Active listener to take on knowledge that is practical. It's a living thing. He doesn't go to libraries to read up on stuff. He doesn't have any current strong relationships, but wants them and has had them in the past. And then he wants to acquire a new skill set and earn enough to where he can settle down. So in the loosest of outline terms, we can build Boren's backstory. And I think given the nature of what you presented up to this point, the thing that we want to focus on is probably how he got into his nautical engineering, like from wherever he was as a young mountain dwarf to the point where the campaign starts. But it seems like he's been in the place where the campaign starts for a while. He's established a community at the pub, stuff like that. So going to before that point backwards. So the specific things that I think are worth highlighting as we build this rough outline, and then we can further fill in the gaps to inform everything else later on. I think the pessimism and the lack of current relationships are the two big points that I think are worth building the outline around, because those are the two most compelling things to me. Do you disagree? Are there things that you would rather build the outline around?
That is exactly where my mind was. I got a little bit nervous when you were going to declare the two most, and I was like, oh, please, this is what I want to play.
Yeah. Okay, so what's in your mind the rough outline? No proper nouns, no even titles, I would say. Just talk about family or friends in the most general term. I would even keep it away from things like mom and dad.
As for backstory?
Yeah, as we're building this outline. So for Ari, just for those of you that haven't watched Kyber Shards, this will be like a teaser, but those of you that know who Ari is, like for me, I would say as a rough outline, stripping all of the information, all the serial numbers off, Ari grew up in a very healthy, happy circumstance that was torn away from him by external factors. And after some time on his own, he was taken into a circumstance that he's not happy in. That would be like the roughest of outlines. And that's kind of what we're going for at this state.
Again, to avoid the idea of it being a chip on his shoulder, the pessimism, I think that we've described someone who is capable of developing these things in relationships. And so I think that they were lost. I don't think that a partner in the future would necessarily be the first partner. That has been lost in some way, shape. The idea of not developing a community at this point is because that was lost through whatever way. He does not belong, but he has at one point, and that's why he knows he wants it again. In the broadest of terms.
Okay.
I don't know if he's not welcome, if it was taken, if it was lost.
Okay. But yeah, generally speaking, Boren's community is gone. Whether it was lost to him, taken away from him, he was thrust out of it. Something happened to where Boren has lost his community. And so he no longer has one, but desires to have one again. So in the roughest terms, how did he land in the harbor?
The place that he was is no longer available to him. And I think he chose the place with the highest amount of turnover traffic.
Okay.
Intentionally, so that it could be knowing people for no more than the weekend. Everyone intentionally coming and going.
Yeah.
To deny attachments.
It's the temporary friend thing from like Fight Club in the airplane.
Yep.
Like
single serving friendships.
Single serving friendship. Yep. Okay. Colin, how do you feel about Bourne Stone Shadow?
I genuinely want to get to know this guy. I really do. I was excited at the idea of going through your process of creating a new character, and now I want to go more. I genuinely enjoy this. This is a person that is already on the outskirts of three-dimensionality.
Yeah. And we're just getting started. For those of you that are interested and want to come back, the next step, we'll actually create the personal history of Bourne Stone Shadow. So develop the timeline of significant events and experiences that got Bourne to where he is now. We have a loose outline, which generally speaking, I skip the loose outline thing when I'm doing it for myself, just because I immediately then launch into the personal history. But since we're breaking this up into videos, I wanted to have a little bit of it to build off of next time. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Check out Colin on Twitch. Sorry, BTR, the O is a 0. Also on the YouTubes, Game Pass Guru. If you like video games, he talks about them there.
I do.
And check us out on Kyber Shards over on the Laughing Tree channel, where Colin plays Pog, I play Ari. We've referenced them a couple times over the course of this video. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.